Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome home to the native, landing on a podcast space destined for greatness. 60 minutes or so hit, not too long for the grave shit. High level combo, politics in a way that you can taste it, then digest it. Politics touches you even if you don't touch it, so get invested. Cross the T's and dot the I's, Gillum back to get 'em, stand on business with Rye. You could have been anywhere, but you chose us. Native Land Podcast, the brand that you can trust. Yes!
Welcome home, y'all. This is episode 23 of Native Land Pod, where we give you our breakdown of all things politics and culture. And today, we are, of course, your hosts, Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and Andrew Gillum. What's going on, everybody?
What's up? Why does it feel like forever since I've seen y'all? Jeez.
Because we had the nerve to record a podcast earlier last week. That's what happened. I miss you too, AG. I thought
it was maybe because Tiffany was out of the country. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's true. It's a thing. It's a vibe. We'll get into that.
We'll hear more.
Yes, absolutely. Well, speaking of hearing more, we want to make sure that you all continue to rate and review our show. We always like to hear from our listeners. We like to hear what we're getting right, what we're getting wrong, what you don't like, what you do like. We might not change it, but we still want to know. So make sure that you are tuning in, that you're asking a friend or 5 or 11 to also tune in and to rate and review the show. So on today's episode, we want to first start off with Hunter Biden. As you all know, Hunter Biden was convicted of 3 felony charges related to unlawful possession of a firearm. But today on this episode, we're going to focus on something a little bit different. It is the criminalization of addiction and how we as a country respond to addiction. Should it be criminalized at all? Should this case have ever seen the light of day in a courtroom? We got things to say about that. It might have something to do with him being a Biden. It might have something to do with it being high profile. And it might also have something to do with somebody named Leo Wise. More on that. Tiffany, I know that you are just returning from an amazing trip.
I am, and I'm so excited to talk about it. And I have to say, I am learning from you guys as we talk about these things, because I've been completely out of American politics for a week, and it has been good to my spirit.
Well, we understand that.
For sure.
Yeah, we understand that. Even when we don't get to go overseas, sometimes we need a break. And on that, folks are asking, if the system is there for us, if it's here to protect us, if it has ever served us. We're going to talk about that and if we should be trying to get dual citizenship with Tiff to get the hell out of Dodge. So we'll talk about that as well. And then, Andrew, I know that you are following what's happening with the Supreme Court closely. So you got some things you want to talk about with that.
Of course. As you know, it is the month of June, which could only mean 2 things. One, if you're Alito or his wife, that you're only about a month away from being back at your insurrectionist sympathizing beach house. And if you're any one of the rest of the American people, you probably want to know what's coming at jolt speed from the Supreme Court on a range of decisions, and we'll dive into that too.
Oh my goodness. Well, here we go. We're going to get into that. And the last thing that we're going to cover today is, I don't know if y'all knew, but politics aren't just everywhere. Did you know racism was too? It's a thing everywhere, all over the world.
Did this happen while I was out of the country? When did this?
It must have happened while you were away.
Just while you were away.
Tiff, can you imagine? So we're going to talk about this case involving Vinicius Jr.'s racial abusers in Spain and how they were penalized if we think that was significant. I don't know how, but somehow today feels like a very heavy legal episode. So we're going to make sure that it's clear, that we understand it. Tiff, our news bureau chief, is making me also correct the record on some things, but we'll get into that a little later. And of course, you all know it's not Native Land Pod without some calls to action. So we'll do all of that. We are so excited to be with y'all today. Welcome home.
Welcome home.
While there has been much testimony about the defendant's abuse of drugs and alcohol, ultimately, this case was not just about addiction, a disease that haunts families across the United States, including Hunter Biden's family. This case was about the illegal choices defendant made while in the throes of addiction, his choice to lie on a government form when he bought a gun, and the choice to then possess that gun. No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant. However, Hunter Biden should be no more accountable than any other citizen convicted of this same conduct.
So Hunter Biden is slated to be sentenced, the judge says, within 120 days of the verdict. I think what's fascinating here is what he didn't say. I'm going to tell y'all what he didn't say. They spent your taxpayer dollars because Hunter Biden put on a form that he did not abuse drugs in order to obtain a weapon that he never used, that he never shot. That is what this case is about.
That he had in his possession for 11 days.
He never used the gun, however long he had it. Never used it.
I think you must have that wrong, Angela, because Republicans, are you trying to say that they care about gun control?
Imagine that.
I'm confused. First, that is so ridiculous.
No, they care about controlling a narrative. But what we do need to talk about here is the fact that your taxpayer dollars paid for this case over what he marked on a form. And I'm just saying, if we get to a place where it's interesting, because I never thought, Tiff and Andrew, that I would be arguing that there's partisanship in the application of the law. I normally have sat in the seat of just like, we know it's not equally applied to us. Yeah, but it is fascinating how much attention has been paid to this Hunter Biden case, when just remember, Alvin Bragg just closed his case against Donald Trump just days before this. And there couldn't be more of a stark contrast. Anyway, Tiff, you were going to say something. I was just in full rant.
No,
they're not in the same category. Yeah. I mean, even to co-locate what happened in Bragg's prosecution of Trump versus what occurred here, they're not. In every day of the week, the Southern District of New York's prosecutors are engaged in some form of records cases where misinformation, disinformation, false information has been put, which is the lane in which Donald Trump is in. Never before in the statutory history of the federal system has a case been brought single-handedly on the issue of lying on an application for a weapon.
Right.
Never.
Right.
It just didn't exist before. Now, they have existed as co-locating that crime with other crimes that then ramp it up to a more significant offense, but not stand alone by itself. I think all of us can be honest in concluding that never, ever, ever would this case have been brought had Hunter Biden been Hunter Bowe, Jr. Slovakian, or Gillum, maybe. Hell, I've already endured that one for him.
Yeah, hold on.
But depending upon the man's last name, really did I think measure the kind of unmitigated quote unquote justice that was brought to his doorstep. And I have to tell you, I shared with y'all over text yesterday how triggering this was for me because watching not only the addiction side of the ledger, but also, just being a person of sort of political note where you feel like the whole thing just happens to be crashing down on you, not because of an action you've taken as it relates to where the law is or isn't, but because of actions you've probably taken or how you stood outside of anything to do with the laws that are being used to prosecute you. In my case, I felt like it was, had much more to do with my own political ambitions and aspirational heights than anything. Certainly not to do with the facts of the matter. And I've seen it played out so many times in my own state, and I think just around the country with Black lawmakers. In Hunter's case, though, he's not even a lawmaker. He's never held public office. He happens to be the son of the president of the United States, previously the vice president of the United States. And I got to say, had Joe Biden chosen not to run for re-election, I'm not sure that this would have ever seen the light of day, aside from the fact that it shouldn't have seen the light of day anyway. It would have, because
Department of Justice under this Attorney General did not stop Trump era related political prosecutions. He just didn't.
No,
this
that's
didn't
true.
begin under this administration. This began
true.
under the last one. We have to start acknowledging what happened. Tiff, you've been trying to talk for 5 minutes.
It's
Go
okay.
ahead, please.
I'm listening and catching up. But I take your point, Angela, about the DOJ and Attorney General Merrick Garland's failures. I think we all agree there. Andrew, I think you raise a good point. This is all politics and weaponizing the justice system, the same thing the GOP has been falsely claiming. I think this is a more clear example of that. But I think the bigger issue here, I shouldn't say bigger issue, but an equally big issue is pointing out the hypocrisy with the Republicans. And I'll start with gun control. There have been 124 mass shootings in the first 4 months of this year alone. Andrew, Florida leads in that number. And that's according to the Gun Violence Archives. And they describe a mass shooting as a shooting where where 4 or more people have been shot. So the fact that Republicans are quick to come out and eschew away any policy that impacts gun control, but they are so hell-bent and laser-focused on Hunter Biden operating a gun while he may have been using substances. The other hypocrisy is in 2016, Donald Trump, when he was elected president, declared the opioid crisis an emergency and was talking, and you saw droves of white people saying how their families had been impacted by drug addiction, specifically the opioid crisis. All that empathy went away when it came to Hunter Biden. I saw Donald Trump talking to families saying, we're going to fight for you. We're going to protect you. We understand the opioid crisis. This isn't a partisan issue. This is something that impacts a lot of people. We didn't see such empathy under Republican administrations during the crack epidemic, under the Reagan administration, under the Bush administration. He, in fact, pursued a harsh, punishing criminal justice system when it came to Black people using drugs. There are now more than 300,000 people in prison because of drug addictions, crimes they committed while under the influence. That's according to Pew Trust. In 1980, it was less than 25,000. So I think if this is the game the Republicans want to play, then we ought to use this as a chance to highlight that the First Step Act needs a second and a third and a fourth instead of centering, Hunter Biden. I'm not going to lie, though. I was reading some of the things about Hunter Biden, even when Biden ran during the campaign. And he was a wild dude. I don't think he deserves to be prosecuted for this. He had an addiction. But the more salacious yellow journalism part of this, I have to say, I was reading some of the things that he participated in with just shock, but also empathy. All of us on your screens have had family members. I grew up in a home with addiction. So I have mostly empathy for the Biden family and what they're going through.
I appreciate you saying that, Tiff. We are pollsters now. We started our polling company last week.
What's the name of our company?
The podcast.
Native Land Polling?
Native Land Pod Polls.
Native Land Pod
NLP
Polls. I like it. You down
something
with
like that.
NLPP?
Maybe just NLP.
Yeah,
just
know
NLP.
me.
NLP, that's cute. Okay, so we are going to do a little poll. Tiffany already asked our first question, or has answered it for us, which is we do all have family members who have been addicted to some substance at some point. My next question is, has your family member who was addicted to anything ever lied to you about said addiction?
Of course.
Answer's yes.
Yeah.
Has the family member ever done something that brought shame or disrepute to the family because of said addiction?
Yes.
Yes, for me too. Tiff is nodding yes. So I think that what it feels really out of touch is, and why I think Black folks and people who come from marginalized communities need to sit in prosecutorial seats, is because they write these statement of facts, these indictments, so that you almost, it sounds so salacious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's clear that they don't have any connection to what they are talking about. So, for example, Hunter Biden being convicted for lying on an application, the question on the application was, do you use any illegal substances or have you ever been addicted? In that moment, Hunter Biden argues and maintains that he was not using. So an addict is generally in denial about their addiction. And also, if he was not using at the time and was not addicted from that state of mind at the time, how can you, that's subjective. It's a highly subjective standard, a highly subjective answer. But I want to get beyond this to this part of this piece. I want to know, because we talked about pardons last week, that was a part of our poll, so continuing on here. How will you see Joe Biden if he chooses not to pardon his son for this?
Well, he's already said he isn't going to pardon.
So if he said that, but he says things sometimes and then changes his mind, every human being does. If he chooses not to pardon Hunter Biden, what does this do to his standing, to how people see him? What do you all think?
I think he's being a purist there. I would not be mad if he pardoned his son. I think the challenge with the Democratic Party at times is look at how upstanding we can be. And, we don't act like the Republican Party. And who are you winning with that? If I were the president and my son were in this situation, of course I would pardon him. I would not sacrifice my son for a political stunt by the Republican Party just in the false hope to gain Nikki Haley voters. It's like, if this was you think Donald Trump would not get in office and abuse that office. He put Jared Kushner in charge of the Middle East. He made Jared Kushner the secretary of all the things, and he didn't care how that looked. So I wouldn't be mad if Joe Biden pardoned him.
Well, it's paid off for him, right? I mean, the exact region of the world that he put him in charge of, he walked right back into when they left the White House, and walked away with a several hundreds of millions of dollar deal that they're not profiting from today. I would just say on the Biden piece, I'm not convinced that it's a stunt for him. I think that he's a traditionalist. I think he thinks of himself, and probably very realistically thinks of himself, in the mold of an upstanding and right individual. And if the justice process has had its way, which in this case, there were 12 jurors sat, they deliberated, even though one of them came out yesterday and said, I don't even believe that this should have ever become a case in the first place.
Right.
The first vote that the jurors took, when they went back to begin the deliberations process, 6 said he was guilty and 6 said he wasn't. And when they returned the next day to continue deliberations, that number began to collapse as they then applied the evidence of the case to the instructions given to the jury by the judge. So I think this was a really complicated thing for a lot of people. I will say, Angela and Tiffany, this statute in and of itself to me seems a little bit dubious because, first of all, if any person who is an active addiction, but may not have yet gotten the help, begun to seek the help, has not entered treatment, they're not, one, readily in awareness that they are an addict. And two, the truth is, the saying amongst addiction is once an addict, always an addict. So if you've been clean for 30 years,
yes,
but yet you have in your life experienced addiction, the truth of the matter is you're an addict until you die.
That's such a good point.
And so at what point could somebody have answered yes to that as a person who has at one point admitted being an addiction, an active addiction? Could they have been right on this side of the question? And that's why I think the statute in and of itself deserves, us pulling back the layers and seeing whether or not this really ought to be, a law by which people are that is prosecutable. But in Joe Biden's case, I don't think he's acting. I think he believes these things. And I think he is experiencing probably a very, very deep level of hurt and pain, having lost one son already in Beau, and then now his other son, who he has experienced various levels of loss through addiction. The fact that he flew to see him before heading for the G7 summit, just to hug him on the tarmac and say, I love you, I'm with you, is probably the most honest effort he is making to make sure that his son doesn't fall back into an active addiction as a result of what's happening here. So my heart goes out to him. My heart goes out to the whole family. And really, this whole process sucks. And I think the attorney general sucks. And I think his willingness to appoint all these special prosecutors who were Trump era appointees, as if they're going to have some obedience to the law, is ludicrous. I just think Neil. I just think we suffer from delusion.
Andrew, can I ask?
And he's like at the tip of the spear.
I just want to be clear. So, are you saying that Joe Biden might not pardon his son because he thinks that's the best course of action for his son? And do you think he should pardon him?
I think he thinks because of their relationship. I think because he said he would surrender judgment unto the jury, to the process, it's going to have to work its way out through the legal process, which means an appeal at the appellate level to see what happens there, and so on. I don't think he ought to. I think a president who can come behind him should pardon him. This should never have been prosecuted in the first place. I just think the conflict of interest for him is too great. It is for himself, for him to enter into this process and say, I'm going to pardon my son after being found guilty by a jury of 12 members of
What do you think,
peers.
Angela?
I didn't. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't answer this, but I want to be quick because this is gone. I didn't mean for us to go this long on this. But I will say, I think that Joe Biden should absolutely use pardon power because this never should have been prosecuted to begin with. I don't care if it was his neighbor, his enemy. Like, this is so dumb. Like, I think that this administration should make a conscientious effort to look at all of the things the DOJ is going after where they are wasting taxpayer dollars and pardon all of those people. Like, this is clearly political, and hopefully it will dissuade. They should, but they should also dissuade it. Hopefully it will dissuade folks from continuing to pursue these cases because it really needs to be a congressional hearing. There needs to be oversight on why this continues to happen. It is ridiculous. So speaking of it being ridiculous, Tiff, I know you're not Calgon, but can you please take us away?
Yes. So,
or do we need to take a break?
We have to take a break. So we're going to take a break. I was just about to say, I'm going to take you away to a commercial break, but don't go anywhere because on the other side, we want to hear from you. And we have a viewer question that asks about my trip to Africa. Not really, but it's going to be my excuse to talk about it. So we'll see you on the other side.
Hey, what's going on, Native Land? Andrew, Tiff, Angela, big fans. The question that I have for you all is this. If Trump wins, do y'all have like contingency plans for where like y'all gonna go? Like if y'all decided to leave the United States, do y'all have places that y'all would go? Places that you would recommend for Black people to, I don't know, become expats? Because the way the country going, yeah, man. That.
I love this man.
I thought he was saying we're enemies of the state.
Where are we
going?
going?
To get out of
But
here.
I love the pause for emphasis. And I love like our community engagement where he's like, yeah, cause when you say that,
we know what that means.
So I actually think this is a really interesting question and timely question. Yes, I think that we should be open to exploring living abroad and becoming expats. In December 2022, Angela and I, with some of our other friends, traveled to Accra, Ghana, and got to see all parts of Accra, from Treasure Island to the city. And I met so many expats who lived there, who decided to leave. Remember we had that luncheon? We went to that luncheon, Angela, at the church?
Yes, it was hosted by Rosa Whitaker, who is a legend.
The legend Rosa Whitaker. There at that luncheon, there were so many people who were American and said they came to Ghana and loved it. So I recently, as in like hours ago, just got back from Morocco and Côte d'Ivoire. I was in Abidjan, and I had so many thoughts. And honestly, every day I thought of you guys because I just wanted you all to experience this with me and us to be able to talk about it every day. One, the entire point of the trip, it was put together by this gentleman, Pierre, and it was made to show economic opportunity on the continent. And again, there were a lot of people who had come and lived to build there. But the thing that, and Angela, I think you'll remember this feeling, being in a country that is ours. And everywhere you go, people look like you. And so if someone is rude to you, which is rare, if someone is unkind to you, which is rare, you don't immediately have that feeling of, oh, okay, I know what this is. I know what it's about. That level of comfort and security it's indescribable. Also, I was intentional about putting myself on a non-American news diet and talking to the people there. They knew all about American policy. They knew secretaries of state from 20 years ago. They were just intellectual people, well-informed people, arguably because what happens here politically impacts their country as well. But they also were well-versed on what happened in the UK. They were well-versed on what happened in numerous countries in Africa. They could speak intellectually on the political system of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Morocco and Algeria. They knew Middle East politics. It was just a intellectually stimulating conversation. But what I took away, and the question that I wanted to ask my co-host, and we don't have to answer this now because this may be more philosophical, is who are we if not defined by white people? And I got to meet so many folks there who had a better sense of who they were, because so many, I'm stealing from Andrew. Andrew said, we were at my house one night with Latasha and some other people. And Andrew said, we make so many decisions every day based on how white people will perceive us. And so it can limit our imagination. And I was sitting there thinking, maybe he does, but I don't. But the more I thought about it, almost every decision we make is that. We think from how we dress, from how we wear our hair, to how we speak, to what we say in public, to what we say privately. So I'm curious from you guys, when you think about that, who are we if we are free to be? If everything we talk about isn't rooted in how the system oppresses us and how living here impacts our lives, who would we get to be if we were not interrupted? I don't know if y'all thought about that. This might be a mini pod for another day. But I really thought about it.
That's a dope
right?
mini pod.
Okay,
Yeah,
so maybe
it would be.
we'll save it for a mini pod. I did African ancestry, and my ancestry traces back to the Akan people. And so when we were in Ghana, it was just lovely seeing all the symbols of the Akan people. But it's present day Ghana. The Akan people were also in Côte d'Ivoire. So they arranged for me to go and connect with the Akan people today. And this is the welcome that they gave me. I was so, it was so amazing.
I love it.
And I know this isn't present, but Angela, I would, if you don't mind, would love for you to share your experience when we were in the dungeons. They call them castles, but they were really dungeons in Accra, Almina Castle.
Yeah. It was a very emotional experience in the castle dungeons, the slave castle dungeons, which is where our ancestors went.
The door of no return.
Before they made. So is where our ancestors went before they go through the final door and onto the slave ships and are shackled for many days, next to somebody they don't know, perhaps next to someone who speaks a language they don't, women who may be pregnant, or it's that time of the month, or someone who gets sick. Like you're laying in that for days at a time. The only bath you receive is salt water, right? Being thrown on you. And I think even before you make that pilgrimage, that forced pilgrimage across the Atlantic Ocean, they were experiencing the very same thing, shackled to people they didn't know in the slave castle dungeons, where it's dark, it's muddy. There are layers of human excrement now that are, it's almost like a clay on the floors of the slave castle dungeons. I think it's deeply spiritual. You can feel the weightiness of the ones that I visited, and now I visited too. But it's excruciating to realize that there were people who stayed alive because one day they would hope that we would be here and that we would make something different of ourselves. So to Tiff's question, who would we be? We would still be the resilient, strong, innovative, talented, amazing beings that we are, that we once were. We don't know anything else but to be extraordinary human beings. And I think our contribution to society would always be in service. We always talk about the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. That is in our DNA. That is what we know. And so even if it was to make strong leaders, that would be our contribution, that we would be strong leaders because there were folks who poured into us. So I'm so grateful, Tiff, for your share and that you were welcomed home on a podcast where we are always welcoming folks home, for you to have that very spiritual, important experience in that pilgrimage where so many of our folks, our ancestors and our present day friends and loved ones and even folks we don't know never get to make that trip. So congratulations on doing that.
Well, just really quickly, what I
Absolutely
remember
beautiful.
when we were silent in that dungeon that they call a castle, they invited us to just sit in silence and touch the wall and feel the spirit of the ancestors. And we were weeping. I mean, it's just overwhelming. And when we got out, I asked Angela, what was your prayer? What did you say? And I remember you saying to me, well, the first thing I said was, thank you. Thank you for going through this. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your survival. And I remembered those words when I was in Côte d'Ivoire. And so anyway, I missed you guys. I thought about you every day. Everything that we talked about, I wish you all could have been at the table. But yeah, and so I remember those words that you said, and I thought, wow, to lead in that moment with gratitude is also very spiritual in who we are.
It's beautiful, Tiff.
I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll be back after this break.
So, y'all, I mentioned the end of the Supreme Court term is one thing that the month of June represents, and early July. And that's because a flurry of decisions, major decisions, are expected to be issued and opinions from the court. And there's a lot we can say about the court. I know we didn't choose to dive into the comments that were picked up on Secret Record by Alito, but I wanted to just take a moment to highlight what some of those, opinions that we are still expecting are going to cover. So one decision that we expect an opinion to come pretty quickly, either here in June or early July, will be on the question of presidential immunity for Donald Trump. And I know we talked about this quite a bit, but it particularly has impact on two of the remaining cases involving Donald Trump, and that is the documents case that is being brought down in Florida, and also in Washington, D.C., the obstruction case. And the obstruction case not only impacts the president's, Donald Trump's implication as it relates to what happened on January 6th, but also hundreds of defendants who have already been prosecuted or those who have been awaiting prosecution, whether certain federal statutes can be applied. Abortion pill access. This court has taken on the case of whether or not abortion pills are legal. Whether they can continue to be legislated at the state level. In fact, whether or not there is a federal case to be brought against the availability of the prophylactic. And then I think in addition to various gun cases that we might see, the next most major case may be around the question of social media, the ban against certain social media sites and the First Amendment. Florida, my home state, and Texas currently have laws in place that prohibit large social media companies from removing posts or accounts based on a specific political view. The justices will decide whether or not these laws violate the First Amendment rights of the social media companies. The court is also going to hear cases around bump stocks. That's the equipment used to increase the.
They heard the arguments. They're going to issue their opinions.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say arguments. Rather, the opinion we're awaiting on the bump stocks. And then there's some other minor, might we consider minor, but none of the cases are minor. In fact, I would opine that the justices decided to take on cases that were really not necessary to take on just so that they can serve a more activist role in shaping what U.S. public policy, both at the state and the federal level, should be. And I guess my question to you all is, based off of the bend of this court, what we've been able to see while they've been on the bench and comments that they have made off the bench, do you think we're in line for any surprises? I mean, if our default position is that conservatives are going to be conservatives and liberal justices will be more liberal or at least upholders of the law, are there any expected surprises on any one of these cases that you all might have? Anything you might see as a deviation from what a conservative court might ultimately resolve?
I sadly do not think that. I think the surprise will be just how far conservative justices are willing to undermine the law. For years, even when we were in law school and before in con law classes in undergrad, you learned about a term called a strict constructionist.
That's right.
And those are the folks who will uphold the letter of the law, what the Constitution, what did the framers intend? And you learn that there are justices like Clarence Thomas who argued that he was a strict constructionist, and John Roberts and others who say that they're strict constructionists and they don't want to veer from what the intention of the founders were, even if the founders didn't mean to include you, Clarence. They never steer clear from that. However, it turns out that Supreme Court opinions and rulings can be bought. Clarence Thomas is a hoochie and has been selling it and dropping it like it's hot on every turn.
Getting flued out.
And it turns out he's, he getting flued out, Tiff. And it turns out that he's not strict about anything but making them dollars dollar. And I think that is what is really sad here, that he is for sale and there's no longer any auction blocks available, but Clarence has managed to find one.
That's a word.
That is so awful, but it is what I really feel today, uncensored, just completely raw and frustrated by what I anticipate will be some devastating blows by this Supreme Court. And they've just continued to be this way. I think I would use this moment too, Andrew, a point of personal privilege to say, if y'all don't get y'all asses out to vote.
Yeah.
Like the Supreme Court is a clear reason why y'all asses need to vote. Y'all are mad at this administration because they've done some things you don't agree with. I understand. But what I don't want is a Supreme Court that's going to continue to issue ruling after ruling after ruling that will undermine everything our folks have fought for and that we continue to fight for. So please get y'all asses out to vote.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I think people also have to remember that there will be justices eligible for retirement. Alito has already intimated that he would not.
Please
we
retire.
We hope, but I think they hold on because, as you know, Supreme Court appointments are for a lifetime. Most justices appointments are for a lifetime. There are some jurisdictions where you can get elected. We've talked about that. I think we did a mini pod on that. I think, Andrew, to your question about will we see surprises, I don't know. I think when it comes to some of these partisan issues, I think we won't. Chief Justice Roberts has surprised us a few times on a few of his dissenting opinions from the more conservative-leaning justices. But there are other cases that are not so split down the line. One is homelessness, that they will be issuing an opinion on whether homeless people can sleep outside when shelter is not available. This is just humanity. And again, I think so much of our media centers Trump and what's Trump related and what's salacious and what's hot. But it's when you think about some of these issues, homelessness, that is a pretty big deal. This case originated in San Francisco. But when you think about homelessness in Los Angeles, where Mayor Karen Bass is trying her best to deal with that, homelessness in Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia and New York and all these municipalities that are dealing with this, that's a pretty big deal. So we should be watching that. The other is the Sackler family. This we talked about opioid usage. They will decide if they can basically offer the Sackler family a shield from that big settlement.
Crazy.
Yes. And listen, the Sackler family, I cannot think of a bigger drug dealer aside from the U.S. government.
What is that movie? Can we think of the name of that?
Well, there are several. There are several documentaries. There are several scripted series. But the Sacklers, if it were up to me, the Sacklers would have to be given a small amount of heroin every day for the rest of their life. Watch them get addicted. Watch them go through withdrawal. And then let's see how well Just Say No works out for you. So those are the two cases that I'm really curious about. Also, the air pollution case, where very Republican-leaning constituents and companies that control, like steel companies, they want to sideline EPA regulations from the Environmental Protection Agency. They want to basically say, like, yeah, just hold off and let us continue polluting. Now, who disproportionately lives in areas that are heavily polluted. They look like us. It's a lot of Latino people, but also a lot of impoverished white people live in these areas who will be impacted. And we don't want anybody impacted by those things. So I hope
Tiffany,
people pay
I think
attention.
you might be out of luck on the pollution.
You think so?
You may be out of luck because only because they pay for so many damn Clarence Thomas trips.
You're right.
These corporations have, treated this man to everything.
Can we
to the
please
hill.
cut that Clarence Thomas clip? Because I want to share that 18 times when Angela said they know auction block, but Clarence Thomas found one. I want to share that on all my social media.
He's a hoochie. Yes, we can share it. And in the meantime, we can also move right along. You guys know I was so scared about this. I'm more worried about the presidential immunity case than anything else. I just think that has taken us straight to Kim Jong-un, and I'm not feeling that. So, alas, here we are. So before the country is no more, we're going to take one more break. Some of you all have been following a case that was new to my radar. I like basketball a lot. I don't follow soccer as much, but there's a case involving Vinicius Jr. and some fans who were shouting racist slurs at him in 2023. They were recently sentenced to 8 months in prison and a 2-year ban from all professional soccer stadiums in Spain. And I just was fascinated about the fact that people often don't realize that racism goes far beyond the borders of the United States of America. And it is very, very prevalent in soccer. Vinicius had a response on Twitter where he said, sorry, it didn't pull up. Oh, I can't read that. We got to translate that. Hold on. Read it, Andrew.
It says, many asked me to ignore it. Many others said that my fight was in vain and that I should just, quote, play football. But as I've always said, I'm not a victim of racism. I am a tormentor of racists. This first criminal conviction.
Wait. Say that part again. Say that part again. Say it with your chest. Say that line again, please.
I've always said I'm not a victim of racism. I am a tormentor of racists. The first criminal conviction in the history of Spain is not for me. It's for all black people. Oh, God.
Wait a minute. Pause real quick because this is why I just wanted to tell my bureau chief I had this right, basically.
Black Lives Matter.
Better than
okay, keep going.
Black Lives Matter. This is the real, right?
Keep going.
Just to repeat, the first criminal
keep going. Read the last
in the
part.
history of Spain is not for me. It is for all black people. May other racists be afraid, ashamed, and hide in the shadows. Otherwise, I'll be here to collect, period.
I love it.
Thank you for La Liga and
Real Madrid. Thank you to La Liga.
Yeah, thank you to La Liga and Real Madrid for helping with this historic conviction. More to come. That's powerful.
Hey, I'm so glad that y'all pulled the translation for this. This was so amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
Yo, he said, you guys, can we get t-shirts to say we are tormentors of racists? I love it. That is so good.
That's bad.
I love it.
He said it's for all black people. Vinicius, I need to meet you now. I'm going to go get a Vinicius jersey.
Vinicius.
I'm about to watch a Vinicius game.
Me too.
I'm here for this.
I'm going to start watching soccer.
Vinicius is my Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, definitely. We got to get jerseys, y'all. We got to get jerseys.
We definitely, are we wearing them
We gotta
next
get
week?
jerseys.
Let's do
I'm about
it.
to order them.
They don't get here easy, but we're going to find these jerseys.
I'm sure
we can get those
find
jerseys.
Vinicius.
I'm sure.
We need to sell out Vinicius jersey. We about to get
that.
I'm about to look it up right
that.
now. You guys,
that was really good.
That was powerful.
I think the fact that, some people
said I'm not a victim of racism.
Right, I'm a tormentor
of racism.
But there are some less informed folks who think it was the Mayflower that traveled to America and that was it, and that's the story of slavery. But there were slave ships that transported the enslaved everywhere. America became a superpower because of slave labor. So too did the UK. The biggest somebody fact check me, but I'm 99% sure the biggest slave port was Brazil. I think they got the most number of Africans, right?
They got more black people than anywhere else in the world. Absolutely.
The Caribbean and the sugarcane.
Sugar, all the sugar fields.
Exactly. The difference, though, I think, between us and I'll say the UK, because France, England, all these folks benefit from slave labor, but they shipped their enslaved off. And the unique thing about America is the abuse and rape of Black women. And so we still live alongside the descendants of the folks who did this. And Angela, I don't know if you remember when we were in Ghana, a lot of people, that was kind of the consistent question. Like, it's so strange. You guys choose to live there alongside your oppressors, and you could come home. You have all this space to come home. In Côte d'Ivoire, that was a big thing. Look at the investment opportunity here. Your money goes further. There's real estate for you. It's a completely different system. And we looking at y'all like, man, y'all were kidnapped. Come back home. So that's a full circle moment that this soccer player gave us. We are bookending this show with the first viewer question. There's a lot of homes for us. And shout out, what's the player's name, Angela?
Vinicius Jr. And I got our jerseys can come as fast as tomorrow. So we are definitely rocking these Vinicius jerseys next week. You guys text me your addresses so I get it right after the show. But
mine
before we go forward, and I know we were lamenting some Supreme Court rulings that we're expecting. We're celebrating a victory in Vinicius Jr.'s case. But there's also one little footnote that we need to add from the prosecutor. Let's roll that clip, Nick.
Prosecutor Susanna Hisbert responded to the verdict outside the courthouse.
People should know that this type of act is punishable. It is punishable as a hate crime because the sentence is for moral integrity, with the aggravating factor of hate. And it is also very important that one of the factors taken into account for the suspension of the execution of the sentence is the fact of repentance and a letter of public apology, as well as the fact of not going near not only the stadium, but also stadiums where official matches are held.
So I wanted to roll that because the sentence was mitigated by the fact that they could write letters of apology. So I just think it's, important to note, I am a Christian. I believe that people can repent.
Restoration.
I believe in restorative justice models. However, since I like to be a tormentor or racist, I think sometimes if you do the crime, you got to do the time. That's the one time you ever heard me say that.
And what a death sentence if you're one of these avid and
Did you say you want the death sentence?
No, I said what a death sentence for anyone who's one of these avid followers of football, soccer. In many of these countries where, soccer is king, to be banned from ever seeing one of these matches live, these professional matches live again, or even, as the prosecutor said, even being near a
2
stadium.
Years. It's only 2 years.
Yeah, all I'm saying is 2 years of a death sentence for, we may not understand the significance of what that is, but in Florida, for instance, we probably have the next largest culture around, I think, sort of soccer fandom in the U.S. As probably anywhere else in the country. It's more than a notion to be banned from one of these stadiums, any one of these games that you might otherwise have access to. So,
absolutely,
I do believe that the punishment is fitting the crime.
So we'll just jump in here to calls to action. And let me get, I need to get in uniform for my call to action.
We got a wardrobe change. Oh, wait. I'm putting on my glasses
All
then.
right, sis.
No. You don't know why I'm doing this, Tiff.
Okay. We just want to be in solidarity.
Right. So here, I don't need solidarity right now. This is my solo walk of shame. I'm here to apologize to the viewers and the listeners of Native Land Pod. Last week we recorded a podcast early. How dare we record a podcast early and there be information that comes out later in the week that corrects the record for us. And so last week we spent a lot of time advocating for a man named Corey Harris who's involved in the justice system in Michigan. Our news bureau chief, Tiffany Cross, has told me that I need to come on to let everyone know that I misspoke. It doesn't matter if I misspoke because a woman with the same name as me said one thing one day and said something different 4 days. It doesn't matter. She said that I should have checked my sources better.
I did not say that.
Is my Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Okay. Don't listen to her. Don't listen to her. Just because she says it with a smile doesn't mean that she
I will
didn't
say what I
said,
but I'm going to let you finish.
No, I don't want you to say what you said. I want to say what you said myself. It's more dramatic. So she said that I need to make sure that she said, I thought when you said you looked into this, that you checked your sources. I did. I read several articles on this. It's a primary source. It was NPR. It was Detroit News. It was USA Today. It was everywhere. This woman issued the same statement. It came from the Michigan Secretary of State's office, the communications director.
Yes,
named
but Tiffany
Angela
has to talk to the secretary
herself.
Excuse me.
I'm in the middle of my repentance. This woman's name, now I gotta take my glasses off, I can't say, Benander. Her name is Angela Benander. This woman said that Harris was appearing for driving with a suspended license. She says she's the director of communications and media relations for the Secretary of State. She said because this was no longer legal to withhold driving privileges for those kinds of violations, that meant there were a lot of people who had those suspensions who were eligible to be reinstated. She goes on to say that for several thousand drivers, additional steps were required for them to have their licenses reinstated. And those drivers were notified with letters at their mailing addresses. Additionally, she says in some cases it was fines and fees that needed to be resolved. In some cases, they needed to retake their written driver's exams or road tests to be able to get their licenses back. Furthermore, she said that Corey Harris would have had to acquire a form from the Saginaw County Friend of the Court and submit it to the Secretary of State's office because, quote, it's not something that we would receive automatically from the court. Now, she went back because the judge said he never had a license, and Angela had to my earphones. Let me just take this off. I'm not all the way done with my repentance, but my earphones started sliding. Angela had to come back and say, actually, we checked again. The database indicates that our friend Corey did not, in fact, have a license. However, our news bureau chief also wanted me to let you all know that what we said, we stand 10 toes down in what we said. That sometimes our folks are penalized wrongfully, yes. That we are overly fined, that we are overly incarcerated, yes. That we are overly suspended, we are overly booted, yes. We are overly everything, as you all know, disproportionately booted. Now, here's the thing that also still matters, the call to action. And today, my call to action comes from a very special guest. Let's roll.
Hey, Angela, Tiffany, Andrew. This is Michigan Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. First off, I want to thank you all for covering this case and the video that's gone viral with Corey Harris and the barriers he faced with his license. But what was meant to be funny is actually bringing attention to a greater issue. In Michigan, we had a system for a very long time that is either suspended or taken away people's driver's licenses because they couldn't afford to pay fines or fees or because they were behind on their child support or any number of financial reasons that have nothing to do with how they drive. Well, in 2019, I led a task force on jail reform to fix that and some other issues. And in 2020, we passed new laws in Michigan, creating, among other things, a program called Road to Restoration that provides support and different services for people to get their licenses back. Now, this video is really a call to action. There's actually a Road to Restoration clinic happening in my hometown of Detroit on June 18th for people who are listening to this podcast and either need help themselves or you know somebody who needs help to get their license restored. So you can go to michigan.gov/road to restoration in order to find out information and to sign up. You can register by June 16th for an appointment or you can walk in. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome.
I love that. Kudos to Angela for getting the lieutenant governor.
I would like permission to get off of my walk of shame now.
Take it off.
Yeah.
But let me say, I need to respond. So 1 second.
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
So much. I hate her. I hate her.
Why do
you have glasses ready to go?
You got to stay ready, so you ain't got to get ready.
Andrew said, what is this?
So what I was saying is when Angela said she looked into the case, I was saying like, you didn't call them personally. You were going off what this woman said in an article. So I was saying to protect yourself, like, according to the Washington Post, not that you were like making calls to people. Because when people were like texting me, like, y'all got this wrong. And I'm like, nope, then somebody gave Angela misinformation. So I was just saying for all of us, like, it's like, no, according to this person's reporting, this is what they're saying. I'm not hanging my name on it because I don't know, but this person said that. I just wanted to correct it because Angela act like I called her this morning and was like this. And I was...
Yeah, I almost lost my job. And I just reported on what 10 other outlets said and had to fix. Some of them took their stories down.
I'll give y'all a little behind the scenes. We have a research assistant, Lolo, shout out to Lolo, who does research for us. And I am just paranoid from working in newsrooms forever. Like, Lolo works hard to put together this very nice research packet for all of us. And I know I frustrate my co-hosts because I'm like, well, no, let me see for myself, or let me look at this myself. Who is the source? Where do we get this from? So I can be a bit of a newsroom purist. So my apologies to my co-host.
It's good.
But that's why, just because they can get things wrong. And I also thought that this, a lot of the outlets that reported this, it can be a little bit of lazy journalism, because it's like, y'all have a whole newsroom at your disposal. Like, submit a FOIA, get the records, like, look at it. Just how we talked about on the broadcast news when they were just playing the clip and everybody laughed and we moved on. So that's all I was saying. But I just want y'all to know that was super dope that Angela was like, let me get a response from the highest level of government, because that's the kind of thing that happens here at Native Land Pod. So if you're down with NLP, holla back and say, you know me.
Yeah, you know me.
That was so awesome.
And shout out to the Lieutenant Governor for this program that he's initiated.
Yes, I love that.
LG Gilchrist, we expect great things from you, not just now, but in the future, brother. Hint,
right?
hint.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a quick question? Do y'all think Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, will ascend beyond that role? Because it's been talked about forever.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We're at time.
I think so.
Y'all have calls to action, or is that the only one?
No, I got a call to action.
Please.
Do you want to take your sunglasses off, or you?
No,
I like
she
it.
feeling it.
I'm gonna keep my sunglasses on.
It's giving black
and
thought.
I see my reflection. I like the way it looks, so I'm just gonna keep them on.
Okay, we'll carry on.
It's that sunbathed in gold.
I would feel better if y'all put on y'all sunglasses, but that's fine. My call to action is this: when I was out of the country and not on an American news diet, and it's rare that I feel like the most informed person or the least informed person. I usually feel like, oh, okay, I'm learning, I'm informing and learning. Here, I felt like I was doing nothing but learning. And so it made me think. I read a lot, not just newspapers. I love to read books. And I've read a lot on American history, on what happens here in this country. And I remember like 10 years ago, I read a book on the Armenian genocide. I had never heard of such a thing. I didn't even know this big thing in history had happened. And so spending the last few days with people who were so well read, who had all this information, and they, not only knew about American history, but they had read books on global history and different things that had happened on the continent, in the UK, in Asia. And I just thought, I want to start reading more historical books on things that happen outside of America, just with a more global lens, like the rise, the dynamics in the Middle East, or the rise of Saudi Arabia, or, the history on Lumumba, like all these things that are fascinating. And so I'm doing this, so my call to action is to ask other people to do this. Please drop me your books that you're reading. If you have read a book that you find something interesting, or it was something that you learned that happened outside the United States, please loop me in your book club, because I would like to start reading some of these books, and I'd like us to discuss it, even if it's just on Instagram. So holla back at your girl.
Nice. And finally, my CTA is that this group here at Native Land recorded a special episode that is dropping this Friday of our mini-pod series, which is different because normally our mini-pods drop on Monday. But because Father's Day is coming up this Sunday, we wanted to take out some time and in a special way, acknowledge our dads, the role of fathers. And as a part of that, we make an invitation for you also to share your experiences, those moments or pieces of advice that you receive from your own fathers or father figures that you think might be enlightening to others. So I hope that you all will, tune in on Friday, check it out. And then also that you'll take the time to answer the call to action, and we'll be able to circulate that amongst our social media and, feed it back to you, those pieces that we think are particularly poignant and would benefit the rest of our listening audience. So hope you'll check us out on Friday, and happy Father's Day in advance to all the dads out there.
One of my favorite mini pods, Andrew. That was one of our, I just love the conversation. And I don't know when this is going to air, but we did another one. Can I plug it real quick? And what was it, Angela? In the shallow or the deep? It was Angela's idea, but it was so good. It was so good.
Yes. And speaking of being so good, we are so good on time, y'all. We made it to about an hour in this show. Happy Father's Day to our dads out here, the father figures of the world, those who have made such a great difference in our lives and the lives of our listeners. We applaud you all. Andrew, we see you. You be holding it down. You know how to do a ponytail, AG. We proud of you, busting out all the myths. You know how to make it happen.
I know how to do, but yes.
So, yes. Before we end the show, I want to remind everyone to please leave us a review and subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all platforms and YouTube. Our YouTube channel is pretty dope. You will hear from us every single Thursday. We also have mini pod episodes that drop every Monday. This week it's on Friday, as Andrew said. You can also follow us on social media. We are Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all. We are 145 short days until Election Day.
Gosh, welcome home, y'all.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rye, Gillum, and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth, even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Welcome home, y'all.
What's
Welcome
up,
home.
sis?
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.